David.
This may be changing entirely, but what we talked about is assessment of what goes on in classes.
Yep.
And this department has for a long time prided itself on all the other things that we do that make better alumni, ultimately, that make better graduates.
Ben's been awfully quiet today, hasn't he?
And in the final analysis, what the people up there that are employed doing things that they learned about here, what they remember the best is those other things. How do we put that into assessment?
What you have to define is the takeaways. What did the students gain from judging classes, from Little I, from the IHSA, whatever it is?
Equestrian team, yeah.
Thanks. You know, what do they learn from those types of things? Okay. You have to come up with the definitions of what those students gain. Because if you can't test it, it becomes an indirect measure of student learning.
And they're usually gone when they figure out how valuable it is.
Well,
you know what I'm saying?
yeah.
So,
Go ahead, Kim.
I was just gonna say, so, and the other thing, I know that's hard for me sometimes, is I do like numbers, and this seems very soft or whatever, I don't know the right word, but fluid. You can't pinpoint things, like don't grade the test, and don't, you know, like I think as scientists lots of times is that significantly different or not, or whatever. So sometimes it is hard to assess when our ways of assessing usually is different, but in this particular example, there should be times when they may not realize how beneficial it was until when they leave.
Because it's a social science.
So, okay.
And I could give a lot of probably more personal examples than this, but yeah, as an example, in Oklahoma, I heard over and over and over again, guys that were on the judging team with Bob Todashek say, being on the judging team, you know, that was the most important thing I did in college. And when you really examine what you're saying, having Bob Todashek's undivided attention for a year was the most important thing for them in college. Now, that's extraordinarily valuable, but that has nothing to do with what we're talking about here.
No. There are about 3 things on the floor right now that I can think of. There are at least that many. One is the judging team experience, and you can always identify someone who's participated in judging with oral reasons because they can speak, they can articulate. I'm tongue-tied. I wasn't in judging, you know, so I didn't have that advantage. If you look at graduates 1, 3, 5, 10, and 20 years post-degree, you're likely to get many different answers. Okay. And the other thing that I wanted to address is something that Kim just articulated, and I'm surprised you haven't challenged me on yet. Because I talked about doing item analysis of tests, and yet I've said most assessments should not be identified with a student's name. Okay. You can do item analysis without knowing what the student's name is. Okay. So we need to address that. Thanks for bringing that point up. Are you bored as heck now? Thank you. Point taken. What other questions or comments? Pretty simple. Tell us what you did.
So brain surgery if you know how to do it.
Yeah. I've just recently learned to watch what I say to tall blonde dermatologists with a sharp scalpel in their hands too. So, tell Tell us what you did, tell us what you learned, tell us what you'll do differently. Remember, the courses are the foundation of the curriculum. But tell us why you know what you say you know. Because otherwise, it just becomes a rhetoric, and trust me, you know. And I don't want to go too far down that pathway.
Can I make a suggestion, maybe, like just a departmental basis, or maybe we could bring somebody in, but you know how they have those little brown bag things over lunch, and bring somebody in, maybe for those people who want a little bit more information on, like, how do we design a test or whatever, how do we grade it or whatever. We'd either bring people in who've done it, or it's just a time just to talk around the table, because I know there's things like that you guys do, and I never knew what you guys did until I read that. But you know, you could bring people in and just talk about that, and whoever wants to show up can show up and just do it over the noon hour, and you can get in as much detail as you want or not, and maybe, I don't know, one of those a month or something for the next short bit of time, while we're, I think, trying to figure stuff out maybe. Because I think people know what I think people care, and we do want our students to learn, and we take a lot of pride in our classes. But I think the hard part is we don't know how to word it, or we don't know how to grade ourselves, or whatever, however you want to say it.
A large part of it is we don't know what one another might be doing. You know, for example, I've learned that Tom does something that I admire. I admire the fact that he's giving 5 exams. Okay, do you remember recently we had a midterm grade experiment? There were several classes for whom no grades had been recorded yet. Therefore, everyone in the class was failing. Okay, I think that's a travesty, but that's personal. Okay, Tom, I'm not trying to butter up to you, but he does something else that I like, and that's that he drops one test. Okay, so we can all stub our toe. I can throw the pencil on the table in my exuberance and that particular type of thing, and not get too severely penalized for it. Okay. What he's doing, and that's one of the methods of reducing the high stakes in testing. Okay. So we can move away from that particular basis. Students are going to do better because they're less white knuckle. Preaching again, am I not? Sorry about that, gang. You're a captive audience. We'll pass.
Yeah. We can wrap her up. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You've been patient. Courteous.
Not yet, didn't go everything.
Thanks, Bob.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you.
Thank you for being patient.
Make sure we're done with that.